Stories of individuals, through the stories of ordinary people. The everyman, the ordinary person, is the hero of literature. The hallmark of fiction is that while fiction makes a bow to the different disciplines from which it draws, or it is a spin-off, history, politics, economics, sociology, even science and mathematics. Unlike these big disciplines, it privileges the individual, the ordinary man, and it is almost as if the ordinary person is picked up from the dustbin of history and celebrated. And for the other disciplines, unless you are part of a mob, of a vested interest, of an interest group, the individual really doesn't matter. In fact, the other day in an essay, Umberto Eco went further. He said real literature always talks about losers. It's very boring to talk about winners. In any case, we have here 5 books by extremely accomplished writers who are at the height of their powers and who are masters of their craft, who engage with history through the devices of fiction. So you have excellent stories and strong characters, complex plots, well-chosen detail, and you have an exploration of the riches of language. The pleasure that a well-constructed sentence can give you is something that lovers of literature know. And all their works are shot through with the essential humanity of their vision. You have Flood of Fire by Amitav Ghosh. This is the 3rd of his Ibis trilogy. In this book, we have characters whom we have first met in Sea of Poppies. So you have characters with different desires, different ambitions, who are caught up in their own struggles. You have opium traders, you have adventurers, sepoys, timid housewives. All of them are sailing on a ship from Calcutta towards Canton. The year is 1839, and they are about to become enmeshed in one of the battles of the First Opium War. And of course, they don't know it. And this is what Amitav Ghosh spins in his novel. It is equally, apart from being a story about the characters, it is equally an insider's view of the opium trade and the effect it had on the other side. The side we do not usually hear about in the history books. The effect it had on the populace of China and on the economy of India. This book is also remarkable for its use on language, for its play on language. It has a rich lexicon of double entendres, and he uses them to very good effect to effect low Victorian boudoir humor. It is something that I'm sure all the readers of this book did and will enjoy. If Ghosh uses language for comic relief, in Atish Taseer's The Way Things Were, language, what you find the writer doing, there is an exaltation of, in fact an exaltation in language. And the language which is privileged here, or which is given pride of place as the essence of the genius of India, is Sanskrit. At the same time, we find that Sanskrit is also looked at as a tool in the hands of people who want to use it as a political tool. So wordplay on Sanskrit wordplay and the tracing of words with common etymological roots throughout the world, in languages throughout the world, is something that forms a rich textural detail in this book. We hear that in one of the conversations, we hear that the word itihasa, history, when passed in Sanskrit, means the way things were. And in the main, this book is about the fortunes of a family which is caught up with the convulsive events after independence. The Year of the Runaways by Sanjeev Sahota is particularly poignant given our present context of mass migrations of people who are leaving their homes, their war-torn homes, to reach safer places. In his book, this is a book that has been on several lists, including the Booker, you have 3 Indian youths who leave their home in the Punjab and they travel to the UK, to Sheffield, to make their own life. This book also is a rumination on the meaning of true faith, what it means to live not by the rituals or the prescriptions of your faith, but the true tenets of your religion. Anuradha Roy's Sleeping on Jupiter. This is a very slim book, and it is a very gentle, nuanced, understated work on the effects of explosive violence on the lives of people. In this case, a young girl. Her home, her family, her community is disrupted and destroyed by people who claim to be protecting their country, their state, their language. And this protagonist, she comes back to seek answers. And of course, when you have been a victim of such violence, there are no easy answers. This is what the book explores. Shaikat Majumdar's The Firebird, again, very contextual, is about the price an artist has to pay for being true or simply for pursuing her art. In this case, she is a theatre actress. To be true to what inspires her, to the fire that makes her go out and don different roles every evening. It seems harmless enough. It is what so many people do, but there is a price she pays, not just this woman, this actress, but her family, her young son, her the community in which she lives. And again, there is the nameless party here, who the foot soldiers of this party are the purveyors of morality. They will decide what form of culture is right and what form of culture is not. So here are 5 books, and when such accomplished books reach the shortlist, the prize is up for grabs. Any one of them can be the winner of the prize. And I would urge all of you to read these books because there are rich takeaways from each one of them. I know it's a cliche to say that each one is a winner, but as I said, there are literary gems in each one of them, and all of you will find something of appeal in each one. So I leave it to the organizers to announce the prize, since one of them must win the prize. I will just say that this work is a consummate work of fiction, and above all, it embodies the sheer joy that fiction can give. Thank you. I hope you read all the books and that you enjoy them.
Thank you so much, Usha. Can we have Harish Bijur on stage to talk about some of the other works? Oh, there you are.
First of all, it's an absolute pleasure being here at the 4th VLF, and I think I wish to congratulate the trio of directors for pulling it off, and of course all the evangelists who have supported it, despite all the cloud of controversy that has occurred. But as I've kept saying, I tweeted out the day the controversy broke out that, this is a literature festival. If you must fight with words and not without words. Having said that, as a foundation, I just want to go and talk to you about the 60 days that I spent with 6 books, 21 flights and 6 minutes. Each of these, I started with Kumi Kapoor and The Emergency, A Personal History. And I enjoyed myself, thoroughly immersed in it. In fact, I had a perspective of the emergency, as I see it, from a 10-year-old's perspective, as a 10-year-old who lived through it during those days. This book actually made me grow up, and I think, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'd recommend it wholeheartedly for each one of you to read it. Vinod Mehta, the consummate Vinod Mehta, editor Unplugged. I think I loved this as well. It was quite a contrast to me from Kumi. I love the salacious bits with Vinod Mehta, and Vinod Mehta is quite good at those, so I'd urge you to read that as well. It was a complete media view, and it was good fun. The third book that I went through was Halt Station India, a reasonably unique book because it was all about, the first railway track that actually was set up in India, and somehow the Mumbai track, the Bombay track, got the honors on this. We were of course told, there are plenty of trivia in this book, and it tells you what an evangelical task it is to put together a railway system for a country as large as India is. So we were really talking about the first railway track, and apparently Kolkata lost out on it, fundamentally because the ship which was carrying the locomotive for the Kolkata track was sunk by an errant captain. So I think, those who claim Kolkata was at it, I don't believe Kolkata was it, and, Rajendra Aklekar actually clarifies it to a great degree of advantage. A romantic tale of sorts. Then came S. Hussain Zaidi, and I think My Name is Abu Salem. This was an exciting fast read. I went through the book in about an hour and a half, I think. Fast, pacey, the genre of crime non-fiction, I think, is a tough one to stick to without, glamorizing the persona that you're talking about. And the persona you're talking about here is Abu Salem. And I think the author has done a fantastic job on that. Fast, pacey, factual. The next book that I read, the fifth one, was the Heat and Dust Project. Okay, the broke couple's guide to Bharat, as they call it. A young couple who actually took to the roads, left their cushy jobs, took to the road and said that every day I'm going to spend 500 rupees and I'm going to be on track. And within 500 rupees I need to live, I need to have a room, and nearly 300 goes for it, and the next 200 I have to live and survive. I think they've done a brilliant job at what they've said. Two narratives, two contrasting narratives marrying one another, just as the couple are. And I think, the book made me feel, hey, listen, I could have done it. That usual thing when you go to a restaurant, your wife tastes a lovely dish and says, I can make it at home. She's never able to make it at home, but what the hell, I also said the same thing, and I just went on and on. I loved D, as Devapriya is referred to in the book, and I loved Saurabh, who's referred to as S. Of course, one narrative I really liked, and I would pit my vote for one narrative, but I'm not going to tell you who that is, because the couple is married. So the next one, and finally, the last book that I actually read, it took me a long time to read because I immersed myself into it thoroughly, Gita Press and the Making of Hindu India. And I think this was Akshaya Mukul at his best. And I think, we are really talking about Gita Press, a Gorakhpur press, which is well known for its 72 million copies of the Gitas that it has propagated through India, okay, till 2014 I was told. And Kalyan magazine, which has an English version as well, a very percolated magazine, 70 million copies of Tulsidas sold in India, religious literature, and 19 million of the Puranas and Upanishads. I think we're talking about all of this. The book is very painstakingly done, very, very original as far as I'm concerned, a very unique subject, a very unique topic that contrasts the Marwadi families of yore with the typical Hindu families of yore. And one talks about, different things which gives us a context of the word Hindu as it has emerged today. And I really enjoyed reading it, reading about the entrepreneurs, the editors, the ideologists, and the fanatics, of course, each one of them. Early Hindutva mindset, how was it created? How was Hindutva created itself? And I think the early seeds of it, the way it was planted out of this Gorakhpur press. little known Gorakhpur Press to a lot of people. I really hadn't heard of this. But then, when I read it, and the story of H.P. Podar and Co., I think Akshay Mukul has done a brilliant job on this. It's a 429-page must-read, and of course, the appendices are about 120 pages, so you can imagine what a painstakingly put together book this is. And I think it talks about Hindu thought, and it talks about propaganda, it talks about, agenda. And I think in this day and age, when Hindu, the word itself is out there, Hindutva as a movement itself is up there, I think, these are interesting pages to read. I've enjoyed all these books, all these 6 books, and I think finally, and very grudgingly, I had to decide on one of them between 2 very close contenders. I'm of course not going to tell you which that book is, the organizers will. Thank you.
Thanks, Harish. Vivek Shanbag couldn't join us because he's currently out of the country. So with that, I think we will get to the the actual business end of the thing about announcing the winners, and like to take the opportunity to invite English August, Manu Chatterjee himself, to the stage to help us present some of the awards. So the first award we'd like to announce is for the the Atta Galata Bangalore Literature Festival prize for literary achievement in Kannada, and the first ever prize goes to Pratibha Nandakumar.
How many of you know Kannada? Okay. To make a political statement, I'm going to talk in English, because I got this award for Kannada literature, my contribution to Kannada literature, and there are a few things I need to talk, but I'll keep it very short, very, very short. A.K. Ramanujan was called the hyphen in the Indo-American, So in Bangalore, there are a lot of layers, especially if you're talking about language. And for the past 40 years, we have been talking about it, how Bangalore is in layers and they don't meet, And I write a column in Bangalore Mirror, and they gave it to me. They asked me to write a column because they wanted to reach out to the Kannada Kannada people who don't read Kannada, but who would read that in English. Writing in English for Kannadigas who don't read Kannada. That was the brief given to me. So, and it was called the Spotlight on Kannada Culturescape. So I am writing about the Kannada Culturescape for people who don't read Kannada but who may want to know about Kannada. And every time you talk about Kannada, or for the first Bangalore Lit Fest, a reporter had asked me about my opinion on this, and I had told her that the local writers were neglected, and it was reported. When I meant the local writers were neglected or put aside, I meant the other language writers, not just Kannada. There are excellent Tamil writers who Bangalore is home to good Tamil writers, Telugu writers, Sindhi, Marathi, Urdu, Kodava. There are a lot of writers who write in different languages who live in Bangalore. And we have in Kannada, we have multilingual poets meet, and it's very common for us. But the Bangalore Lit Fest had completely ignored that, and that was what everybody was talking about. But this time something else happened, and you know what really happened. But I want to tell you that of all the literary festivals that I have been to, it's the same. It's not that you are noted for one particular language that you write. So you're always introducing yourself as I belong to this language and I am a writer of this language in English. And when I said this, that in the Kannada language festivals that happen, they never invite the English language writers. Shashi Deshpande, you know, she's the daughter of Sri Ranga. But still, you know, she's never a part of us in the way that they were expecting you to make them the part of this festival. So we have had very strong arguments, debates about this, and there are a lot of things I wanted to say, but because I'm taking too long, I just want to read a short poem and close it at that. I remember the first time Attagalata had thought of organizing a poetry reading. They called me because I was a Kannada poet and they wanted to involve the Kannada community into their bookshop. And despite all the advertisement, all the publicity that they had done, there were exactly just two in the audience. Only two guys turned up there that day, and still we had a poetry reading session, and I think you have come a long way after that. I think even this award that they thought of giving is also to say, and it's not that we are sad that this is not happening, it is just that it needs different kind of understanding, how the different languages, you know, they come together at a certain point and they behave in a certain way. And okay, I think I lost my track. I'll just read one short Kannada poem and a short English poem, the English version of the same poem. ಕಾಫಿ ಕುಡಿಯುವುದು ಒಂದು ಕಲೆ ಅಂತ ಯಾರು ಹೇಳಿದರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವನೇ ಇದಾನಲ್ಲ ಮಹಾತತ್ವಜ್ಞಾನಿ. ಅವನ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಕಾಫಿ ಕುಡಿಯುವುದೆಂದರೆ ಮೈಥುನದಂತೆ. ಬಿಸಿಯಾಗಿರಬೇಕು, ಆದರೂ ಗಂಟಲು ಸುಡಬಾರದು. ಸಿಹಿಯಾಗಿರಬೇಕು, ಆದರೂ ಅತಿಯಾಗಬಾರದು. ಮಿತವಾಗಿರಬೇಕು, ಆದರೂ ಸಾಲದೆನಿಸಬಾರದು. ಸಾಕು ಸಾಕು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಏನೋ ಒದರಬೇಡ ಅಂತ ಸುಮ್ಮನಿರಿಸಿದೆ. ಕಾಫಿ ಮಗ್ ತುಟಿಗಿಡುವಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅದು ನೆನಪಾಗಿ ಸಖತ್ ರೋಮಾಂಚನವಾಯಿತು. And if I were to write this, I wrote it in English like this. Defining pleasure. If you're searching for that poem written especially for you, you have to remember that writing poems is like drinking coffee. Brewing, filtering, whitening and sweetening precedes consuming, which is actually what happens in courting. But then, drinking coffee is like making love. Hot, yet not scalding. Sweet, but not too much. Enough, but not unlimited to keep going. Now, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, let's have some coffee. Okay. Thank you very much, Bangalore Literature Festival and Attagalata, for this a very different kind of award. And being the hyphen between the Kannada and the English world in Bangalore, I feel very happy to receive it. Especially because accepting an award in this time of award wapsi, where you have to explain why you are returning the award. I need to really explain why I am accepting the award, and I have written an acceptance speech which I forgot to bring. So I tried to remember what I had written and I just said a few words from that. I am very happy to receive this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to take the opportunity right now to talk a little bit about the award itself. This was something that we got very excited about, and we actually have made an original sculpture for this, something that we call Beyond the Words, which we hope conveys how thoughts often precede their publication into words by writers. The next award, the Atta Galata Bangalore Literature Festival prize for non-fiction in English goes to Gita Press and The Making of Hindu India by Akshay Mukul.
Thank you, Bangalore Lit Fest. Thank you, Atta Galata. I'll keep it really brief because Harish really explained the book very well. In a way, it's this award means it's a grand finale to the book, which actually it's about a small town called Gorakhpur, but Bangalore has made a huge contribution to it. The New India Foundation, run by Nandan Nilekani and Ram Guha, it was more than just giving a fellowship. Ram handheld me throughout this 5 years almost 2 years that I took to write. And what I wrote first, only Ram has gone through it, 220,000 words. He's the only one who suffered it. And made suggestions which is which will go a long way. Then I have my editor from HarperCollins, Ajita, sitting there. She's the one who persuaded me to stay with HarperCollins. She's one of the most brilliant editor that I know of. And wherever she found any problem, anything, she fought, she argued, and whenever there was something, and she made way, and she gave up also quite easily. So it's one of the best editor, and the entire HarperCollins team. Kartika is not here, Bonita, Amrita, the whole team which contributed in a long way. So I thank Bangalore Lit Fest again, Ram for handholding me throughout, and I'm not done with him. I'll continue to badger him for whenever I do my next book. And again, thanks Bangalore Lit Fest, thanks Atta Galata. Thank you.
And the Atta Galata Bangalore Literature Festival prize for fiction in English, The Way Things Were by Atish Tasir. So Atish is currently out of the country, so kindly request Mr. Vasant from Pan Macmillan India to come and collect the prize on his behalf. So we had a surprise when when the jury announced this morning about the selection of Atish. He decided to send us a surprise, and he has a short message for us that I'd like to play.
Thank you so much for awarding my novel The Way Things Were with the Atta Galata Bangalore Literature Fiction Prize. I would have liked nothing more than to be there in person to collect this handsome trophy, but sadly I'm in New York. The Way Things Were, though it anticipates much of what has happened, was written in a quieter time. Our culture wars had not yet reached the pitch and intensity which they stand today. I won't say anything about them. The debate is now too shrill, too thick with politics for any real intellectual contribution to be made. And even Sanskrit, the language that inspired this novel and gives it a kind of deep text, as it were, is not exempt. Given this atmosphere, I want to say something very small, and let me see if I can find a way to say it without causing too much offense. For the past 10 years or so, I have been engaged for 2 to 3 hours a day in the study of Sanskrit. It is an exquisitely difficult language. Learning it is a task better suited to the mind of a child than that of an adult. And in the past, that is what the traditional Sanskrit education, which took 12 years, would do. It would graft the language which came Guru Mukha from the mouth of the preceptor onto the minds of its young learners, so that it became like a second nature. It was necessary to begin young, because quite apart from the difficulty of the language, there was a giant body of literature to read. Epics, treatises, Mahakavyas, lyric poems, Shatakas. The commentaries alone, which contain a whole history of reading, require more lifetimes than even the Hindus allow. Last week I turned 35, and I have made my peace with the fact that very little of this immense literature will be open to me. The simple reason is that I began too late. I grew up in India, I had a natural love of literature and books, but the world I grew up in was such that it systematically steered me away from the treasures around me. My education in India not only left me without language, but it left me without sensibility. I had to relearn everything. Had I received a different kind of education, I might by now have been neck deep in the poetics of men like Mamata, Anandavardhana, and Abhinavagupta. Instead, I have spent much of the intellectual energy of my 20s in a game of catch-up, teaching myself what every Indian child ought simply to know. The creation of an elite with an inborn aversion for its own things was part of the colonial enterprise. The insane thing is that the mechanism by which such an elite was created, education namely, is still intact in modern India. I find it so strange to consider that I, having grown up in India half a century after the British left, should as an adult have to teach myself the rudiments of my intellectual and literary past. Is it too much to expect that my environment should have given me Amaru and Bhartahari, or Ghalib and Mir for that matter, as naturally as the environment of Europe gave generation after generation Shakespeare or Dante? An education in the humanities should ordinarily inspire a feeling of wonder in men for their past. It should deepen the connection to the land. A colonial education does the opposite. It produces estrangement. The Way Things Were is a reckoning with that estrangement. We are called from the past and must make our home in the future, the great Sri Lankan art critic A.K. Kumaraswamy tells us. But to understand, to endorse with passionate conviction, and to love what we have left behind is the only possible foundation for power. Thank you again for honoring me with this prize.
So to conclude, I'd like to thank Upamanyu for agreeing to hand over the prizes. And thank you, Shiny, and the Bangalore Literature Festival once again giving us this opportunity to partner with you. Thank you all. Good night.